So we have a special treat today. For those of you that do not know, we have Mike Braddock and Andrew Saft, who are phenomenal in the world of investing, REOs, all sorts of things. They're also probably the jokesters of the office. They like Andy likes to keep us on our toes in leadership. And Braddock is probably one of the most helpful agents that you will ever find in our world. Anytime we have a training here at Keller Williams, we offer these sheets. You can find them out right outside the main door, but I'm gonna pass them around for you if you're interested in taking one. It's called a 10-5-1-1. And it walks you through what your 10 takeaways from the training are, the top 5 things you want to implement, the one thing that's going to make a big impact in your business, and the one thing you're going to do in the next 24 hours. So this is just a good way for you to kind of keep recap notes on what information you might glean from these done. Feel free to pass them around. There's no pressure if you don't want one, but I want you to know that they're here and they're always a resource. I'm gonna Andy, is it okay if I hand these out now?
Yeah.
I'm gonna hand these out then, and I'll turn it over to the guys and let them get started.
So Mike and I were asked to do this, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I reluctantly agreed because I'm a lousy teacher and I'm a very good presenter. And I'm not as much of an expert as Adrian says I am. There's probably got people in this room who know a lot more than I do. Right?
You're a great teacher. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, right. So we put together this little presentation, kind of, basic one-on-one. Definitely don't want you to get hung up on this stuff. Just try to get the concept of what we're talking about.
It's just the fundamentals, just enough to kind of get you exposed to it. You want to take it beyond that.
Right? Yeah. So I just wrote some notes. You guys have it all now. If we can follow along, I'm gonna go over this real fast. I kind of look at, buying an investment property, if you want to look at it as a money machine. You want to know how much money the property produces and how fast it produces it. Investment property is made up of 3 parts: income, expenses, and financing, and each part, of course, plays important roles. If one part fails, the machine won't work at all. So if the income changes, the investment value of property changes. If the expense changes, the value will change, and so forth. So the income obviously is money from tenants, rent, but there's also other income that you could get from washing machines, dryers, soda machines, and so forth. The expenses are taxes, repairs, insurance, utilities, management, so forth. And
One thing I want to point out on that, Andy, debt service is not considered an expense as far as calculation for your income. Debt service, like your principal interest that you pay to a lender, if you're using financing, is not including in that expense call. Your financing.
okay, so and then of course financing, unless you're out, you have cash. You have cash, you don't worry about this, but there's interest rates, terms, and payments, and so forth. So there's financial benefits. There's cash flow before taxes. That's basically money left over after collecting rent and paying operating expenses and loan payments. There's your principal reductions, which is loan balance paid down with rent collected from tenants. Income tax savings. That's, I think, something you probably want to discuss with your accountant. Don't ask me any questions about that. Right?
Well, we're not experts in that field. I'll give you our 2 cents, but best to talk to a CPA.
So, cash flow and principal reductions, though, are taxable, but there's ways to shelter that. So that's where you need your accountant to help you. And appreciation, which is increase in value. So I read a couple of questions, and I'm not sure if you understand it, but when do you want to analyze the properties? So you probably want to analyze it before you buy the property, Or also, if you're gonna list a property, you probably wanna analyze it. Because a lot of times, and I've experienced this many times, where what the seller wants has nothing to do with the investment value of the property is. So, some of these sellers that own these multi-units, and I've got one now, a couple actually, where they're a little overpriced because, the seller wanted this amount of money, but that doesn't, if you break down the numbers, it really doesn't make sense to an investor. So we put together a case study. We'll try to muddle through this a little bit. So you'll see in your packet there that,
Caleb's bringing more packets in just a minute.
all right, so there's we'll go through this case study quickly. So there's a worksheet, and then I also gave you the answer sheet. And it's pretty self-explanatory, but we'll go through it. So at any rate. You're good. All right, at any rate, at the top of this form, the worksheet. If you want to just kind of glance at that paragraph, it says this sheet's designed to assist. In estimating the first year benefits of the real estate, of your investment. It does not consider the effect of selling or exchanging the property in the future. This form is not a substitute for legal or tax advice and so forth. So it's just kind of a guide to help you analyze the property and get through it to make some decisions. So at any rate, if we want to just kind of go through this worksheet, do you want to do any of this? Or do you want to do this?
Just hypothetical.
All right, so does everybody have it in front of them? All right, so Uncle Louie, we're gonna call Uncle Louie's assumption, that he wants to buy a property. You're gonna help Uncle Louie evaluate his property. So he found a property out there on the market that's that costs $585,000. He's going to invest $126,000 of his own money. He's going to finance $459,000 at 7% interest rate. So that gives him his principal and interest payment of $3,054 a month. So his first year interest is going to be $31,982. And his annual rent is $89,550 a year. We're going to figure in a vacancy rate of 10%. That's first year operating expenses of $36,260, and his first year depreciation $29,000. That's a number that I estimated. Don't ask me how to figure out depreciation. There are ways to do it, but for this exercise, we're just going to estimate it. It's probably pretty close. And we're going to figure that he's at a 35% tax rate, what do you call that? Bracket, that's the word. So if you want to look at your worksheet, and this is really the key to help you guys, if you get used to it, it's really going to help you break down an investment property. Hopefully I can explain it to you well enough, or Mike and I can, because they're going to have to help me with this. So at the top of this worksheet, we got the property information. So we know that the purchase cost is $585,000, and he's going to invest $126,000 of his own money and finance the $459 at a 7% interest rate. All right, so that's $3,054 per month. That we already know because it's on this sheet. Again, the total depreciation, we just made an assumption, for this case study. It's going to be pretty close to that. So then we look at the income expenses. So we got our annual rent of $89,500, less the vacancy rate of 10%, because you're going to have some vacancy in these properties, right? And so our gross operating income is $80,595. All right, and we know what our total operating expenses are, so we put that in there. And then we want to look at the four benefits. So here's where we really get into it. So our gross operating income, and that's where you probably want to make sure you have your numbers accurate. So if you have a seller that's selling a property, I would ask them for their Schedule E. Because they, if you look in the MLS or anywhere, you see people put the numbers in, you hope they're accurate. But if you get their Schedule E, that's probably going to be the most accurate you're gonna find.
That's what they're reporting to the IRS. They should be willing to give that to you. If they're not, what do they hide, right?
Okay, so we got our income, 80,000, and then we deduct our operating expenses. So then we have our net operating income. That's also known as NOI. If anybody ever refers to NOI, and all it simply means net operating income. And then you deduct your debt service, which is your loan payment, your principal and interest payments. And then you have your cash flow before taxes. So that's $7,687. So there you have a cash flow. Now this $7,687 is taxable. Because it comes from the rent, basically, so it's taxable. Now, we look at number two, your annual debt service. We know that is $60,648. And then we deduct the interest, which is $31,982. And that was, we get that, amortize it out over the 30-year period of time. And then your principal reduction is $4,666 there for your annual debt service. So you're ahead of the game there. And again, that's taxable. Anything that comes from the tenants that's rent is taxable. So now we get to your net operating income. Let's see. So your net operating income is $44,335. You deduct your total depreciation. That equals your taxable income. Okay. Now I'm getting a little mixed up. Hang on a second. Interest, you deduct your total depreciation, which is 31,000. In mind, you deduct your total depreciation, and then you equals your taxable income, and that's a negative $647. So you multiply that by your tax bracket, and that gives you a negative 5,826. So you've actually saved that money. So you can see where you're making money and you're saving money on these, right?
Yes, it is. I mean, you gotta take what you're making plus what you're saving into account to determine, the value of the investment. It's not so much what you're making, but also what you're saving. And doing this is the long form for, calculating the investment value. But if you want to do the long form, you calculate what you're saving as well as what you're making. And then that gives you a truer picture of the value of the property. And that's why we provided with a blank one, and then, then the example kind of use it as a guide.
You want to do the rates of return?
Yeah. So, down below that on that same worksheet, the return on investment with depreciation, that's your cash flow before tax plus your principal reduction plus your tax saved plus appreciation. And then all those numbers below. If you look at your cap rate, the net operating income divided by the purchase price, that's 7.6. And you have to determine if that 7.6 cap rate is actually good. There's a simpler way to do a cap rate without taking a lot of this into account. It's just your capitalization rate. formula. It's I over R times B, and I can do one of those for you real quick if you want. And I'm always available to, meet with anybody to talk about that as well. But, you had mentioned something earlier, like, if you are borrowing money to invest in these properties and your net operating income is 7.6%, but your interest rate on your loan is that or higher, you have to question yourself if that's a good investment or not. Paying 8% on a loan, you're making a 7.6 cap rate. It's not balanced out, right? That's not really taking into account, some of the depreciation value, some of the tax savings, but it's just one more thing. And then what we do, Andy was gracious enough to put a lot of this together, but what we do on the next pages, it kind of breaks down what we get on the worksheet there. It breaks it down for you here. I don't think anybody wants me to sit here and read this to you. And then towards the end, there is a mini summary, take a minute to go to accomplish. And it gives you some other ways to calculate investment properties as to whether or not they're a good investment or not. That's kind of a summary version. Do you agree, Andy?
Yeah, so at the bottom here, if you look at, there's basically 4 different approaches to calculate your rates of return.
That's on that same worksheet down at the bottom.
So, the one is the return on investment with appreciation, since we know we don't have any appreciation, so that's basically gonna be an NA. It should be on your answer sheet there, and then the return on investment without the appreciation, and it gives you the calculation there, and that comes up with 14.4%. And then the cap rate, which is what Mike was talking about, the net operating income basically divided by the purchase cost. Gives you 7.6%. And we find there's a lot of talk about cap rates. How do you do it? You pay attention a lot to cap rates? Ben,
Yeah,
you pay a lot of attention to cap rates?
yes and no, it's an easy way to,
You look at these different approaches.
I calculated my debt service too, and
Yeah,
my appreciation of the asset.
so return on investment with or without the appreciation.
Yeah.
And the cap rate, and then there's a cash on cash flow before taxes. So it kind of gives you, several different ways to, analyze each individual property so you can compare and give you a lot of information whether or not it's a good investment or not. This one actually looks like it'd be a pretty good investment with the good percentages you're getting.
Yeah, broken down like that, it looks good, but the cap rate is a kind of down and dirty. It's a quickie. We don't like a quickie rate. If you want to just do something quick to get a general idea, cap rate's good for that. If you want to expand beyond that, then you use the worksheet and get a better picture. You want to talk to them a little bit about how do you find a good investment property?
Yeah, so there's another handout. I guess it's the second part. I'm gonna look at the second sheet. So, people ask me a lot. I know they ask Mike a lot. I hear him coming to his office. Where do you find investment properties? And Damaris can help probably answer some of those questions. I can tell you right now, it's not easy. There's a lot of competition out there, as you know. There's between, agents looking for properties, agents looking for properties for their customers, wholesalers. I mean, everybody's out there, down the same properties. So, I put it together kind of a short list. If I thought about it more, I could come up with, more to put on this list. You guys would probably come up with some items, but you can look at, and a lot of the wholesalers do this too. They look for absentee owners. They search out any of the bank foreclosures, which right now there aren't a whole lot of them out there. But there are pre-foreclosures, out-of-state owners, Craigslist, people advertise on Craigslist, vacant houses. So, as an example, if you're driving around, there's a term that's used, driving for dollars, that. And there's actually software and apps that you can use that you can point at the house and get all the information. Don't ask me what they're called, but they're out there and you get, it costs money, all this stuff costs money, but. So if you're gonna do that, you wanna look for properties that have tall grass that maybe are boarded up, broken windows, mailboxes overflowing. Maybe the codes department, plastered it with condemned notices or whatever. Piled up newspapers, overgrown vegetation, that kind of stuff, deferred maintenance. So that's one way to find them, it's a little bit labor intensive and, you gotta drive around looking for these, but. But there's others, empty nesters, probate, and inherited houses. The tax default sales and the share sales and so forth. FSBOs might be a good source. So, that's kind of where you find them. I would probably advise everybody, if you're looking to buy it for yourself, just go out and tell everybody that you're looking to buy investment
Don't be
properties.
a secret agent.
And, let people know what you want to do, what you're looking for, and, people, if you let people know, if they see something, they'll call you. Jason, you probably had that already.
Andy, how many did we do last year? Just word of mouth.
I don't know how many we did. I can tell you that we,
We didn't spend any money.
yeah, we netted probably close to $150,000 in income doing these, just finding these properties.
Passive work.
Yeah.
And I don't do that.
Bring empanadas.
Can't make empanadas, but I know where to buy them.
Yeah, so they're out there, but it's not easy. You gotta just go hunt for them and put together your little system on how you wanna find them.
Andy and I sit upstairs in the back. Anybody doesn't know, you're welcome to stop in anytime, talk to us. We're here almost every day.
Mike works for free, I charge.
I do.
You get what you pay for, man. So I don't know if anybody has any questions. I don't know what else to say. I think I pretty much covered what I wanted to cover.
We don't want to overwhelm you, just a summary, it's a beginners. But you got questions? You want to know how to do the cap rate? That's an easy thing to teach.
When you sell these properties, do you usually use the cap rate to determine value?
It's a good way to market it. And I can get you a 9% cap rate on this.
Especially on the bigger properties, that's usually how they evaluate to like private equity.
Yeah,
The income approach should get you a higher purchase price.
Andy had a quad down in Stilton, and it made me laugh because. He spends a lot of time coordinating with the tenants to allow showings. So one of the things he's really good at is making sure that the prospective buyers are pre-approved or have people funds before it's gonna interrupt the lives of these poor tenants. And take time out of his day. And he had an investor go through, so-called investor go through, and then comment afterwards that the bedrooms were too small. Now, the cap rate on it was what, 10% thereabouts?
It's shy of it, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's good cash flow on property.
good cash flow on property, and he's saying about the bedrooms are too small. It doesn't matter how big the bedrooms are, if it's cash flowing, if the rooms are full, doesn't matter. So, vet your buyers a little bit too. So that you're not spending 2 or 3 hours out of your day and interrupting tenants showing these properties. But, good job, Manny.
So he's right. So evaluate the property using some of these methods. And and so at least you can tell if you're trying to sell a property to a customer, at least you can tell them that, you're not buying the size of the rooms, you're buying the cash flow,
Right.
and that might help you.
Have you guys,
No.
tried? I could go back to any pre-foreclosure, like on your own,
No,
Not really, no.
because
because we haven't done any real marketing and stuff.
Like what, a sheriff's sale?
no, you know how they have like the list now that you can buy pre-foreclosure?
Yeah.
I don't have time. I'm busy.
It's a hard market, because every wholesaler is usually after them.
Yeah.
Pretty hard.
Yeah,
Typically, I found the better deals are when you can solve a problem.
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
Good point.
Because it's typically like, that's your best leverage you have when you don't have a lot of cash, is finding a problem and solving it. and just asking around.
Yeah, just Halifax, the guy calls, he's a landlord. I'm tired of renting, I'm tired of dealing with the tenant. My mortgage payment is $1,100 a month, but I'm only charging the tenant $700. So he's paying $400 for the tenant to live there.
Wow,
Exactly. He said, I just want to be done.
yeah.
Solve a problem.
Well, one of my easiest ways to find leads is I'll just advertise one of my rentals for an extended period of time. And they typically fill out their Zillow application, which gives me all their landlord's information. And then I can cold call the landlord. And just, because typically that's usually where when they're most vulnerable to sell, or when they are considering selling, is when they're losing a tenant, especially a good one.
Do you use anything like Rent Ready, for applicants?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Well, I won't necessarily cold call them and say, hey, I want to buy your property, but I like to form a relationship and build like, hey, listen, if I have a client interested in a rental, can I call you? And then just slow play it. Build a relationship over a couple of weeks, months, years, whatever. And then typically I'm the first one they call when they do want to sell. Or, offer seller financing too, or find different markets, but that's a super easy way to passively ask them to sell.
To coming in with a value.
Or even just stroking their ego and asking like, hey, listen, how did you do this? How do you, do you mind having coffee sometime? And then slow play it, because typically they're not looking to sell right away, just like nobody's looking to sell their house right away. But if you build a relationship and add value over the long term, then usually the first one.
It's good stuff, man. Thanks.
The long con,
What's that?
the long game.
Well, yeah, I mean, those are better deals. I mean, you don't wanna, I don't like to invest in stuff that, doesn't have a long play. Like, I would prefer equity over cash flow in the long game. But typically, the ones that don't wanna sell right away are better properties anyways. If they wanna sell them right away, there's usually a reason.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you guys manage your properties yourself? Could you speak to your experience on property management?
I mean, I have a property manager in Florida for my stuff down there, and I get a check once a month. I've only ever got one phone call. And it was, what do you want to do in this situation?
Like a maintenance thing?
Yeah, that's 10%. It's really a good value for me. I'm 1,100 miles from there, so.
Have you ever managed your own property?
So there's the different management companies out there.
Costing me 80% of my headaches.
Well, it's not worth my time.
Oh. So I heard a really good quote about that. So as soon as you start having more problems, you will stop investing. As soon as you're overwhelmed, you'll stop investing. So sometimes giving up 10% to a property manager, then you have the brain power to go much further.
Yeah, it's an excellent.
Longevity.
I think it depends, what your business model is. So if you look like Mike Murphy is a great example. And he started out with nothing. And he started buying units. Now he's got a big company. They manage their own properties. He created a business out of it. So if that's the business you want to be in, so you have however many units you can accumulate, that's your business, and that's what you do day in, day out, is take care of your properties. If you have another job, or if you're a realtor, or whatever, just investment, yeah, you're probably better off with somebody else taking care of the headaches and the repairs. But I know I've heard complaints for different things, some of these management companies, I won't name any names, they all, I know them all, but they, I guess, and I'm not sure, I guess it's sometimes the way they charge. You have to be careful, some of these companies don't have in-house maintenance people, so they'll sub everything out. And then whatever that sub charges, then they tack on. So it could get expensive. If you don't pay attention to that and let them get away with it.
Well, one of my mentors told me, don't do anything. It sucks. You're gonna waste some cash flow. But the end game is to accumulate 10, 15, 20 rentals. And if at rental 2, you start mowing the grass, or you start painting, or you start doing this,
Yeah.
you will no longer have the enjoyment or want to do it. So
Yeah, I get that. So
getting
my-
your long
my-
end.
Yeah, I get it, but my point is, make sure you hire the right management company.
Oh, yeah.
That's important when you develop that relationship.
Without throwing the bad ones under the bus, do you recommend any good ones?
Google.
It depends where.
I don't wanna say they're bad, but I mean, I know them all. Midtown, he's a pretty good guy, the Harrisburg Property Management, they do a good, they're all in it to make money, so,
I like First Capital, they're out of York or something.
is that right?
Yeah, I don't like the other two.
Yeah.
I don't know them, but I just don't.
I don't know that much everything you said, but I just don't like them.
They might be great
Think that-
people, I
think
don't
that
know
ain't
the way
funny.
they manage.
Think of the other bitch you
I would say, so when I was interviewing property managers, I would ask them how they like determine who they're gonna rent to, how they show the property and like that. Cause you want somebody who's invested in your property who sees it longer, so sometimes giving up an extra 3-4% to somebody is much better. Like I know I manage most of my own, but I'll have open houses instead of showing it to one person.
Right.
'Cause that's a super easy way to determine who's gonna be a decent tenant.
Yeah.
If they can't make 2 hours in their schedule, they're not gonna be probably good tenants. And if you have two, you also protect yourself because of equal housing rights and anything like that. You say whoever wants to come see it, Sunday 1 to 3. And then typically whoever shows up, then they can go online and do a Zillow application. But I found that the property managers who are systematic in their approach usually make for better property managers.
When I was interviewing different property managers, it was finding out what their fees were, because some sound better with what they're gonna charge you for their rate, but then they have all these additional fees, or they may change how their processes. One of the things I found out from a different property manager, because I continue to talk to different ones, in different areas, is what I currently have in place is I get charged a fee for them to go through the property and check it, and they don't really seem to think it's a priority to be walking through the property, what I think it is, at least twice a year, and this other company was like, it is a priority for them, they wanna be in there, when they send a maintenance person in, they are also using that as an opportunity to check on the property. So I think asking those additional questions is very helpful, and some of the things I didn't think about, so. And then how they feel about maintenance, can you bring in your own people, or do you have to use theirs, and how do they charge us?
Great stuff. Hey, well, thanks, everybody. Anybody, any more questions?
Can I be down?
Sure.
What? What you say?
So you gotta be down with the guys.
No more questions?
Good.
Thanks,
Good
everybody.
discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Well, all right, Ms. Tara Smith will be, joining us for 6 Personal Perspective at 12:30. So, feel free to hang around. If you need to run out to grab something, just make sure you're back here by 12:30.